You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin. I love you.
I know. Thank you to our patrons for helping make this episode possible. Visit patreon.com/heroesjourney to learn how you can support The Hero's Journey. It is your destiny.
If Demigod patrons Dean Ethington and John Peterson Jr. were here, we'd meet them in the South Passage and express our true feelings for them.
Oh, God.
Welcome to...
It's ridiculous.
Welcome to our Hero's Journey analysis of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
This second installment of the Star Wars saga blasted into theaters Friday, May 21st, 1980, nearly 40 years ago.
Jeez, on a cupcake.
What is happening to you right now?
I wasn't prepared for you to say the number 40. Please proceed.
Empire Strikes Back was the highest grossing film of 1980 and to date has grossed more than $538 million worldwide from its original run and several re-releases. When adjusted for inflation, it is the second highest grossing sequel of all time and the 13th highest grossing film in North America. It's the third highest grossing Star Wars film, with Episode 4, A New Hope, taking the top slot, followed by Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
I just want to insert here that of all the films we've done, the box office information online for this movie is the most erratically reported. Like, I had to sort of double check 3 sources and get in the $500 million range. I also read that it made over $577 million in video rentals.
Wow.
But there was no...
In rentals?
In video rentals over time.
Holy
They didn't
smoke.
say how much of that was Betamax and how much was VHS, but I didn't...
We could probably guess the ratio.
Empire Strikes Back won 2 Oscars, one for Best Sound and a Special Achievement for Visual Effects.
Both deserved.
It was nominated but didn't win the Oscar for Best Art Direction, Set Decoration, and Best Score, which it lost respectively to Tess and Fame.
Fame?
Don't make me sing it.
Empire Strikes Back was directed by Irvin Kershner, also known for RoboCop 2 and the 1983 James Bond movie Never Say Never Again.
Also known as Return of the Sean Connery.
You just wanted to do a Sean Connery voice again.
I did. It was written by Lee Brackett, whose first film credit is from 1945.
That was more than 40 years ago. It
was a movie called The Vampire's Ghost, starring John Abbott and Peggy Stewart. Empire Strikes Back appears to be her last film credit.
This is the first... Really?
Yeah.
First writing credit for Lawrence Kasdan.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Kasdan went on to write Raiders of the Lost Ark, Return of the Jedi, The Big Chill, Silverado, The Bodyguard, Wyatt Earp. Wow.
Never heard of him. It starred Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, and literally everyone else.
All right, enough exposition. Holster your blaster. Hop on your tauntaun.
Blaster, really?
What?
This film features the epic lightsaber duel between Luke and Darth Vader, but you're dropping, like, blaster into the intro?
All right, raise your X-Wing out of the swamp. Activate your lightsaber and prepare to atone with the Father. It's time.
Now I feel like that's too on the nose.
Empire Strikes Back!
Act 1 of The Hero's Journey begins with the ordinary world, or the world of common day, where we see our hero in his status quo normal life. Luke is an orphan, a budding Jedi, and a rebel X-Wing pilot stationed on a secret base on the ice planet Hoth. He and his gang are hiding.
Gang?
He and his crew... When you're a rebel. He and his gang are hiding from the Empire after blowing up the mother Death Star.
Wow. We're going blue already.
Yep. That's it. That's World of Common Day. That's where Luke's status quo is at the beginning of this film.
Yeah, the opening crawl, I think, in Star Wars films does a pretty good job of establishing World of Common Day and to great respect.
Yeah, that's a good point. It gives the picture of the whole world. And this may be as good a time as any to talk about how this film is Act 2 of the trilogy, so it's dark.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moments in the film that really, if you look at these characters and continue their journey from the first film, we could reassign a lot of moments from the first film and from this film to different parts of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
If we then continue the story into the Return of the Jedi, but we have to look at this as a singular story.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what we'll be doing here, but
Right.
I think that would be an interesting exercise to go through the whole trilogy and do it that way.
Maybe we do that with the prequels.
God.
That would get a lot of listeners. Dean would love
All
that.
right. Okay, well, maybe you have Dean on instead of me that time.
I quit.
Second segment is the call to adventure. This is where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ice planet Hoth.
So comfortable.
Luke has checked out a meteorite that crashed nearby. He's had his butt whooped by a giant snow bear.
Wampa.
I know it's called a wampa.
He got womped.
Womped. And has escaped using his pinky force abilities.
That's right. Maybe it was just because it was VHS and the resolution was crappy.
Yeah,
but you totally think it
resolution.
was this pinky.
His scarf hanging down behind his fist looked like he was sticking his pinky out.
But
I was like,
watched
he's a dainty tea drinker Jedi.
But then I watched it this time, and I was like, how could I have ever thought that was his pinky? Like, he clearly moves his hand.
Sure. I mean, you're watching it on a 55-inch high-definition television now, whereas before we were watching it on a 15-inch black and white, low-res VHS copy.
Exactly. The
of course it looked like his pinky.
The copy I had was so bad that when lightsabers struck together, the whole screen turned to snow. I'm like, how is that even possible?
Oh my gosh. All right, so anyway, Luke has escaped the Wampa and stumbled out into the snow, and at the most inopportune time, because nobody is going to believe him,
right?
Ben Kenobi's Force Ghost appears to him and tells him to go to Dagobah and learn the ways of the Force from Yoda.
Yes.
That is Luke's call to adventure.
It doesn't get more clear-cut than that.
Right.
Luke, here is what you will do for the entire second act of the film.
I am Lawrence Kasdan, and I am fulfilling this segment of the hero's journey with these 19 lines of dialogue.
Perhaps when we get to Indiana Jones, I will be more subtle with my calls to adventure. But you don't question it.
Because it's a Force ghost.
You're so excited to see Obi-Wan again.
And Luke is delirious, near death.
Yeah.
Right? He's freezing to death. This could be a hallucination, too. And so, of course, it's, I think it's perfectly well done.
I loved it.
There's no reason for it to be anything else.
Agree.
The rebels also pick up an audio signal from a Imperial probe droid. Han and Chewie have gone out to investigate, and they discover what it is, and Han says it's a good bet the Empire knows we're here. And General Riken says, we'd better start the evacuation. And so I feel like that is a call to adventure for the rebels as a group.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the Force, now they have to leave their resort planet and find somewhere else to hide out.
Their last resort planet. Before you go
Captain Firmus Piet.
Before you go on, Captain Riken, is that his name?
General Riken.
General Riken, thank you. I didn't know this until I watched the commentary, but that's a British actor, and his entire performance was looped by an American.
A death march is not an easy thing to live with. You're a good fighter, Solo. I hate to lose you.
All of his voice.
Why?
Because George Lucas wanted all the good guys to be American sounding and all the bad guys to be British, but they shot it mostly at Pinewood in the UK, so they didn't have access to as many American day players. So they hired a British guy and then looped all his dialogue with an American actor.
That's ridiculous.
It is until you watch the film again and you realize all of that dialogue is slightly wrong. And they find ways to cut away from him so you don't see his mouth moving.
Why do that? Why not just have the general have his own voice? C-3PO's got a British accent.
Look, I didn't write the thing.
All right. The final call to adventure. Captain Firmus Piet, played by Kenneth Cawley, oversees the analysis of messages received from the probe droids. He's received a promising message and decides to alert his commanding officer, Admiral Ozzel.
You are awesome. You're doing the every point of view for your sections of the journey. I love it.
Piet, man. He is the only Imperial officer to last more than one film.
He gets more promotions than Johnny Rico.
Yes! He was Johnny Rico before.
He has these moments in this movie where it's almost comical. Like the first time he's on screen and Darth Vader force chokes the guy who just failed him.
Right.
And he's got this thing where he's like sort of watching him crumple at the corner of his eye. It's so funny. I want to see more movies with that guy.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to engage in the adventure. Refusal comes from without here as the Empire attacks the rebel base and tries to kill everyone. Luckily for the careers of the actors who played them, Luke and his friends are among those who escape. I don't think Luke refuses the call. His refusal comes from resistance from the Empire. That's what I got. You got more?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. You stumped me. You did that so fast. I expected there to be a much longer discussion.
This is that thing where we don't need, like, it's not necessary for us to include every plot point, right? In the movie, you just pick the part that really represents that segment of the journey. That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, okay. So I wrote down that R2-D2 was a very small expression of refusal of the call when Luke has escaped in his X-Wing and they are not going to the rendezvous point. And R2 asks,
"We're going to the Dagobah system." "Yes, R2. That's all right. I'd like to keep it on manual control for a while."
R2 has this concerned whistle, and he looks at the camera.
Oh, breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, he totally breaks the fourth wall. He looks at the camera, and I thought that was a very tiny but humorous refusal of the call there.
And that's when Luke says,
"Somebody good gin and tonic. She makes me up another."
Admiral Ozzel berates Piet after Piet has given him the promising lead.
That's
and
right.
Ozzel says, "We've got thousands of probe droids searching the galaxy. I want proof, not leads."
That's right. And then there's this silent moment after Vader says, "Follow that ship, that's them," where Ozzel, is that his name, kind of looks at Piet and does a very subtle head shake like, "Nope, we're not doing that." And that's the harbinger of his doom.
All right. Next segment is Supernatural Aid or Meeting with the Muppet.
So good.
Yoda is the mentor for Luke in this film.
Yes.
The meeting with the mentor in this case takes place in Act 2.
Yeah.
We're still in Act 1 of the hero's journey, but as we say all the time, pieces fit in different places.
For sure.
Do you have more Yoda discussion you'd like to?
I'm Yoda.
I'm a soldier. A mountain and soldier. I thought I told you. Don't be unwise to be not by my side. You won't believe your eyes once the X-Wing rise.
So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We're sticking in the 3-act model here, but Yoda is for sure the mentor.
Yeah, and he's got this really great introduction. He's this tiny, obnoxious
gremlin,
little goblin creature who trashes Luke's campsite, steals his food, assaults R2.
in the commentary, George Lucas specifically says he's going for the mythical trope where the mentor is disguised as a funny little creature,
right?
And turns out to be. And so when we get to test, we're like, this is the first test of Luke. Will he treat this creature with respect or disregard him because he's just a little funny thing?
Because he's beneath him. Right, exactly.
To me, the real mentor scene is when Yoda tells Luke he's not ready.
All his life as he looked away to the future, to the horizon, never his mind on where he was. What he was doing. Adventure. Excitement. A Jedi craves not these things. You are reckless.
And then Luke says, "I'm not afraid." And all of a sudden, Yoda becomes this terrifying... I remember seeing this movie and being like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like this creature.
You will be. You will be.
And then there's the scene at the beginning of that of Luke and Yoda talking inside his little hut where R2-D2 gets up on his tippy toes to look through the window.
Right.
And on the commentary track, Kirsch talks about how because this movie was so dark and so serious compared to the first one, he was always looking for moments to inject some levity. And so he said to the crew, I want R2 up on his tippy toes. So that all night they had to like rebuild R2 so that he could do that.
Because we've never seen him do that
He's
before
a
or
machine.
since.
Yeah, there's no like, he's a robot, a
Right.
remote control thing.
There isn't really a moment here for Piet, but I thought that in the same conversation where they're talking about the signal they've received, and here's an image of the power generator, and Ozzel shuts down Piet, but Vader is walking by, and he says, "You found something." I'll have to cut in the actual Vader voice because that was terrible.
You found something.
Yes, my lord.
And Piet shows Vader the image, and Vader like immediately jumps on it. He's like,
That's it. The rebels are there.
and that's where Ozzel gives Piet that look, like, you
Right.
son of, you just went over my head.
Yes.
You're done.
And he does this subtle shake of his head. Like
I don't.
It's super subtle, but
it
he
must be. Because
he looks
I
at
don't-
him.
I
and-
didn't see it.
Yeah.
I see the look. He like glares him down and then walks away. And Piet's like,
Oh, I'm caught between. Yeah, that brings us.
stuck between a rock and a hard case.
That brings us to crossing the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. Luke and the rebels escaping Hoth is what I see as the crossing of the threshold. This is what brings us into Act 2. And in particular, it's the scene that you mentioned, I think, as part of the refusal, where Luke says, we're not going to the rendezvous point. We're going to Dagobah. That's Luke committing to the journey here.
Agreed.
And that's when Obi-Wan says, Luke, use the Force and run. Run to Dagobah.
I wonder how many of our listeners know what we're referencing here.
This is Star Wars Gangster Rap. It was a flash animation video,
And it was
from the
amazing.
It's amazing. We'll post a link to it, and I'm sure half of this will be us cutting in clips from that.
Right.
They did a special edition too, but it's not as good. So, we got to talk about the Battle of Hoth. I had a Hoth playset, and it wasn't like the same scale as the Star Wars figures. It was his own little playset, and it had little walkers.
Oh, yes.
And little guys.
I did have that. I had that too.
And it had the tower, the turret.
the little laser turret mounted porta potties.
I think that was my favorite Star Wars toy because you could recreate the battle. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So watching this movie again in detail, undistracted, I got to re-experience the first time I saw it. The first time you see those walkers through that binocular set, you were like, what in the hell are those?
Right.
And obviously,
I would have soiled my Garanimals if I was in the trench and I saw that coming at me.
that was terrifying. And then the Tauntauns and the Imperial Walkers was the first use of stop motion animation in a Star Wars film. We haven't seen that before. Tripping the Walker, such an original, like when they fire the tow cable and you don't expect that. It's such
Right.
guerrilla war tactics, and it's so great. Okay, so I don't remember in the original edition seeing an ATST, the two-legged walker. Was that a special edition insert, or was that in the original film?
I don't know.
I don't
I
remember.
feel like that was in the original, but
Okay, so
it could. I don't know.
the other thing I wanted to point out is that during this battle and the preparation for the battle, we get some of the worst like ADR voice acting in film history.
Oh,
There's this one guy giving orders, and he says,
Group 7 and 10 will stay behind to fly the speeders. As soon as each transport is loaded, evacuation control will give clearance for immediate launch.
Right, sir.
and it's just like someone reading it off a page is awful. And then
it's like almost as bad as the detective in Clerks.
yes, and then the other one is
Imperial troops have entered space. Imperial troops have entered.
Imperial troops.
Oh,
have
I love that one.
It's
Come
hor-
on, you suck.
He's got no
You
urgency.
suck.
Oh.
He's a 15-year-old. Come on. He lied about his age so that he could sign up, and this is the end.
You're listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff. This is Act 1. I mean, just no... The Imperial troops have entered the base. This is the worst possible outcome.
You know what? He's trying to remain calm under pressure.
Well, he succeeded in that. That's all I got.
Posthumous Medal of Honor for that kid, Jeff.
He was already dead when he said those lines.
Wow.
His performance was posthumous.
All right. Crossing the threshold for Captain Piet. After coming out of lightspeed too close to the Hoth system and alerting the rebels to their presence, Vader is angry.
Yeah.
and he murderates Admiral Ozzel through the TV.
Yes.
He doesn't even have to be in the same room with someone anymore to choke them to death.
Yes.
You can do it through the TV.
That's amazing.
And then we get the wonderful line,
You are in command now, Admiral Piet.
So
I love that. He's Captain Piet. He addresses him as Captain Piet, gives him an order. You are in command now, Admiral Piet. What a great promotion.
never has a promotion been a threat also.
I need a new ship, Admiral. You're it until you're dead or I find somebody better.
That's exactly. I just want to say, I want to see The Empire Strikes Back remake from the point of view of Piet.
Me too.
I want his Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead version from his point of view.
Oh,
I would watch the hell out of that.
I wonder if there's a book. I wonder if he's featured in any of the Extended Universe books.
I have never read a Star Wars novelization of any kind, and I have never read an original Star Wars book.
You haven't read Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire trilogy?
It's on my TBR. I want to read that, but I've never read any Star Wars books. And Chuck Wendig just wrote one, so
he's written
to catch
a
up.
trilogy.
I can't wait.
He's written the Aftermath trilogy. Jeffrey.
I know.
You have Audible.
And I call myself a Star Wars fan. Despicable.
And that is the end of Act 1.
We'll be back.
Coffee break.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Jeff.
What are you watching, reading, or playing?
I saw 2 interesting movies.
Tell me.
One is a Chinese science fiction film called The Wandering Earth.
Wow.
Came out, at least in the United States, earlier this year. It's on Netflix. It had a theatrical release in China, and at the time, maybe it was last year, but anyway, at the time, it was the highest grossing film, I think, in the world.
Whoa.
Like, it had grossed more than the Avengers Endgame.
Holy crap.
At the time. I mean, China. So that's a massive population of potential moviegoers.
Yeah.
The film is about, there's about to be a solar catastrophe. And so humanity has banded together and built boosters on one side of the planet to move it away from the sun.
What?
And stop the rotation of the Earth.
What?
So there's these... Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and visually it was gorgeous.
Wow.
It had some, for me at least, it had some character problems. I didn't care about anybody. Everybody was expendable from my point of view. But just as a concept...
Was the science believable, or was it just like...
It wasn't about that. It was just, hey, we've built giant boosters along the...
equator or something?
No, it wouldn't be the equator. It would be the
meridian.
The
other thing.
The meridian. Is that the meridian?
Yeah, the prime meridian. It goes from North Pole to South Pole.
Yes. Okay,
right?
yes. So they've built boosters along that to stop the rotation of the Earth, and then on the sun side of the Earth, boosters to push the planet farther away from the sun. So the farther away they get, everything gets colder. Because we're farther from the sun.
Oh,
of
wow.
course. So everything is snowy.
I want to watch this.
Like I said, it was a really interesting visual science fiction film. And, it's Chinese, so I enjoy watching foreign films just to hear other languages.
Yeah.
I just think it's just an interesting experience for me. I also watched the new, I guess it's a comic book movie, Joker.
Oh, I want to see it.
With Joaquin Phoenix. I am surprised at all of the detractors that I'm hearing, but I thought it was a really fascinating character study. And maybe because it is about Joker, maybe that's why there's so many people who have a problem with it. Because a lot of the negative opinions that I have read about this film are... They don't like this as an origin story for Joker because he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would be able to outsmart Batman. He's just crazy. Personally, I thought it was a fascinating film. It's more about mental health, really. And I remember when the second Christopher Nolan Batman film was announced. And a lot of us thought, why would you try to recreate the Joker? Jack Nicholson did an absolutely pitch perfect comic book version of the Joker. Why would you try to redo that? And then we all saw Heath Ledger's performance,
Right.
for which he won an Academy Award.
Yeah.
And what was terrifying about Heath Ledger's performance is that he didn't do a comic book Joker. His Joker could be a real guy.
Right.
That's what was amazing about his Joker.
Yeah.
So when I heard that they're doing another one, again, I had the same thought. I mean, you've got this perfect Jack Nicholson comic book version, and then you've got this perfect real world version by Heath Ledger. Where else are you going to take this?
Yeah.
But holy crap, Joaquin Phoenix pulled it off. He does an amazing performance. I think he will at least be nominated for an Academy Award.
Wow. I can't wait to see it.
What about you?
I haven't seen a movie other than The Empire Strikes Back since the last time I looked you in the eyes. And I had a conversation with my wife last night about time management and work and movies. And
those are the best kinds of conversations with your spouse.
She's amazing. She said, you're a creative person. You need to digest more creativity. And she's like, the only times you read are when you're tired or when you're doing other things, listening to an audiobook. You need to sit down once a month and have a movie projected onto your eyeballs. So my commitment between now and the next time I see you is to watch at least Joker and hopefully Joker and It Part 2. That said, I'm almost finished with 2 books. The first was The Girl Who Lived Twice. Actually, I just finished that yesterday. It's the new David Lagerkrantz book in the Millennium Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series.
Got it.
And I was very disappointed. It just doesn't... The premise to get Blomquist, our journalist hero, into peril so that Salander can save him was thin. And I think also, in the first book, he goes through a horrible trauma. He's captured and tortured and almost killed. And I felt like the author didn't honor what it would be like for someone who went through that trauma to experience something similar.
Oh, okay.
So that was disappointing. It still had some great Girl with the Dragon Tattoo moments that were fun to watch. The villain kind of comes out of nowhere, but he's a good villain, a good James Bond villain. A very gentle and polite sociopath. And then I'm almost finished with the latest Stephen King, The Institute, which is kind of a classic Stephen King premise, kid with special abilities, government conspiracy. It's really enjoyable, and it's long, and it's juicy, and it's vintage Stephen King. So I'm enjoying those things.
Is it just the kid, or is this one of his ensemble, like The Stand or Under the Dome?
There's 3 points of view, I guess. The main kid, and he's basically kidnapped and stuck in a research facility where they're doing tests on kids that are slightly psychic or slightly telekinetic, and they're trying to develop their abilities and test them. You don't really know why at the beginning.
Is it Xavier's School for Gifted Children?
No, it's nothing like that. So
wouldn't that be awesome?
Right.
Like at the end, it's revealed to be an X-Men crossover.
An X-Men prequel by Stephen King. So it's not an ensemble cast per se, but there are multiple characters, but it's not like multiple heroes that you're tracking.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it. Looking forward to finishing it.
Nice. I am not quite done with The Gone Away World, the book I discussed last episode. Like I said, it's. I will use the word slog, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the trek, but
Yeah.
man, it's a difficult book to get through.
Steep mountain to climb.
Right. But I'm enjoying it.
All right. Well, we're gonna get a fresh hit of coffee, and we'll be back with Act 2.
Act 2 begins with what Joseph Campbell called the Road of Trials. Christopher Vogler's modern adaptation of this hero's journey calls it Tests, Allies, and Enemies. Once having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. This being the second film of a trilogy, we've already met almost all of Luke Skywalker's allies.
Right.
Except for one, the little green goblin Yoda. Mm-hmm. The enemies we already know. The Empire, Darth Vader. Basically, that's it. Just the great dark cloud.
Yeah.
Tests.
Hang on.
What?
I think you've left out a pretty important person.
Oh, Lando.
The shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Lando, for sure.
He's not an ally or an enemy. He's both.
I think he becomes...
He becomes an ally, yes.
Yeah.
Especially once you see the third film.
Yeah.
He has a rise and fall and redemption in a very quick sequence of events.
I'd also tag Yoda as a shapeshifter because when we first meet him, he's funny little goblin, and then he transforms into the mentor.
Yeah.
Now, it's an act he's putting on.
Right.
But from Luke's point of view, he shifts shape.
I would agree with that. As for tests, the entire experience on Dagobah is kind of a man versus wild situation for Luke.
It's the training sequence.
He crashes his X-Wing into a swamp, and it is half submerged. He can't get it out. So he unpacks everything, sets up a little camp. He's trying to clean off R2-D2 after R2 falls into the water and gets swallowed by some kind of a swamp beast and then spit out again because he is unpalatable.
And plus he has to deal with that stainless steel snack box filled with pats of butter, peanut butter pretzels, Chica sticks, cat food, beef jerky, Mentos, cheese cubes, and 2 flavors of Tic Tacs.
What?
That's what
Is that from the Robot Chicken episode or something?
No, I freeze framed it and tried to categorize it, and then I found an article. Luke Hamill tweeted.
Mark
Skywalker tweeted that he remembered sesame sticks and 2 flavors of mints, and you can see they're white and orange Tic Tacs for sure in that box.
A test for Han and friends is escaping the TIE fighters that are chasing them after they leave Hoth, hiding in the asteroid field in the cave.
Well, getting through the asteroid field is certainly a test, and Threepio even calls out the odds.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds. And it's a great relationship moment for Threepio and Han Solo. Threepio's comic relief in this movie, but he's also the person who checks in with the stakes. He is nervous and scared all the time, and he's kind of the person the audience relates to because he's not really a hero. He's a normal sort of like accountant who's being taken on this journey of hell and being fired at. Yeah, I mean, he's a translator essentially, right? And he's been thrust into this adventure for which he is not qualified or prepared. And he's kind of the way we relate to the danger of the movie.
Yeah, he's not like R2 where he has, tools built into him that assist the group. All he does, like you said, all he does is translate. And that comes in use, but not in any kind of an action situation like this.
So all he can do is piss people off by telling them the odds.
Another test is while the Falcon is parked inside the cave, Han and Leia begin their romantic relationship, and C-3PO is a threshold guardian here.
Yes.
In this situation,
yes,
when
good.
The two of them are having their intimate moment, and they actually kiss, and then 3PO comes in. Sir, I've isolated the reverse power coupling.
Yeah.
And then Leia takes her opportunity to skedaddle at that moment.
What is that mysterious switch handle thing she's trying to turn?
I don't know. They didn't explain it to you when you went to Galaxy's Edge. You said you got to play with it.
You walk by the line and there it is. It's so good.
Another test is Luke is enduring tests all throughout his time on Dagobah. This is his Jedi training that Yoda is putting him through. He's riding him in his little backpack and whispering sweet nothings into his ear as Luke runs through the swamp and does flips over fallen logs and
plus,
stuff.
it's really hot and sweaty. So he's,
Can you imagine how humid it must be?
He's wearing a sleeveless shirt, but it's clearly like thick wool.
Right.
Like, why would you? What is a horrible?
Well, it's probably his under.
Yeah, it's for flight in space.
For his flight. Yeah, it's supposed to keep him warm.
Yeah, and I guess a shirtless Luke training sequence would have been too weird.
Maybe. Why don't you take over and do some tests from your...
Well, I kind of wanted to point out a Yoda moment.
Okay.
Luke fails to identify who Yoda is, and he says, I'm looking for someone. And Yoda says,
found someone you have.
And Luke replies, I don't think so. And Yoda has this look of disappointment. His ears kind of wilt.
Aww.
Lucas spent thousands of dollars on a campaign to get Frank Oz nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And it didn't go anywhere because the Academy felt that a puppeteer couldn't be an actor. George Lucas explains in the commentary how ridiculous that is because from the beginnings of what became modern acting and commedia dell'arte, so much of it was puppetry. And sometimes I feel like I discount George Lucas because to me, the prequels totally didn't live up to expectations, and it lowered my opinion of him as a storyteller. But when I hear him talk about Star Wars, I go, God, that guy knows so much about how to tell stories. And it was just a moment in the commentary where I went, man, George Lucas deserves his success.
The Lord of the Rings had a similar experience with Andy Serkis
right?
as Gollum.
There was one other test, which was the Minox in the cave, which are these flying vaginas that land on windows. They had to defeat.
You are obsessed.
You
called the brain bug in
I mean, when it lands on that window.
Vaginal.
All right, maybe it's I got something going on with me. Fair enough.
Flying vagina.
But I think sorry. I think and it went off the rails.
Oh God.
Oh God.
I'm good. I'm all right.
That brings us to
I'm all right.
Approach to the Inmost Cave. This is where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of his quest is hidden.
Oh. Okay, go.
I hope this doesn't lose us our iTunes rating because I'm leaving that in. Approach to the Inmost Cave. After a long training session in the jungle, Luke senses something in the environment around him. He says,
"There's something not right here."
And then one of my favorite Mark Hamill moments.
"I feel cold."
I feel cold.
Wow, that was...
It's such a great performance. Mark Hamill in this movie he's vulnerable, and he does these off-the-cuff line readings. A lot of this movie, it's an action space adventure, and a lot of the lines are punched like you do in an action movie. They have to sound right. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the end of a scene, and it has to lead into the next scene, so the line reading has to be kind of perfect. And he's the one who has these vulnerable moments that just kind of feel real, and that was one of them. Yoda says, "This place is strong with the dark side." And Luke asks,
"What's in there?"
Only what you take with you. Your weapons. You will not need them.
But Luke disregards Yoda's warnings and takes his weapons into the cave. That's my approach for Luke.
Admiral Piet has informed Darth Vader that their scanners cannot find the Millennium Falcon. Vader orders Piet to calculate every possible destination along the Falcon's last known trajectory and ends his order with the unveiled threat,
"Don't fail me again, Admiral."
That's Piet's approach to the Inmost Cave. His dangerous, dark place.
I think for Han and Leia, it's their approach to Bespin, the Cloud City, in the Lando system.
Yes, agreed. Which takes us to the ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. You and I are in sync here.
Wow.
I was really concerned that you were going to go a different route, and I'm glad that you didn't.
I want to promote here the bonus material. When we do Second Thoughts, which is every time we do an episode, we release a patrons-only audio bonus feature where we discuss the episode itself. It's like a meta episode where we talk about... Actually, it's a video. We usually do a video. This episode of Second Thoughts, I think, will be our best yet, because my analysis pivoted entirely about 16 hours ago, and I look forward to talking about that.
Interesting.
Because
okay.
this movie is the second act of a trilogy,
Yep.
and so there's a whole alternate way to look at this.
Yes.
But please, go on.
And
with
I
it.
think that's where I was headed to.
Yeah,
But in this film, is because we are looking at this film as a singular story. The cold cave on Dagobah. Luke straps on his weapons belt, descends into the cave, and is faced with Darth Vader.
Yeah. Talk about literally the inmost cave. It is a literal a cave.
Right. And Luke draws his saber. The two engage in a very brief lightsaber battle, and Luke defeats Vader rather quickly, decapitates him, and All of this is in a very dreamlike. The music is all strings, like very. I'm sure your wife would know the proper terminology for this type of music, but I don't know how to describe it.
Let's put it this way: it's better than the score for Fame. Okay,
yeah, right? Oh my God! And it's like there's frame rate drops or something throughout this scene.
It looks
slowed down.
Yeah, it's slow-mo, but it's not. They didn't film it at 120. It's like slow-mo they did in post-production because it's dreamlike and shifty.
It's kind of choppy almost.
Yes.
But as the helmet rolls along the ground, the mask explodes off, and Luke is looking at his own face.
Right.
This is a spiritual ordeal for Luke Skywalker, where the Force is warning him, you are following a dark path, and this is your future if you don't take steps to correct it.
Yeah. It's also foreshadowing. Mm-hmm. Lucas became a fan of Joseph Campbell, actually. He was not heavily influenced by him until after this trilogy was complete. That's when he met with Joseph Campbell, and they discussed the movie. But obviously, Lucas was plugged into the hero's journey. But this is that psychological, the subconscious that Freud and Jung talked about. This is that kind of imagery.
Right.
For me as a kid, when that helmet exploded and Luke's face was inside it, it was shocking. Right. I didn't understand it.
Oh, I didn't either.
I didn't understand what was going on, but it's such a great dream image.
Yeah.
I was just going to add that I think the kiss between Han and Leia is their romantic ordeal.
Oh, yeah. Like it could be the last one.
Yeah.
Because there's no guarantee that Han Solo is going to survive the carbonite.
And their
process.
Their personality clash sort of comes to a head there. And he says,
"You like me because I'm a scoundrel. There aren't enough scoundrels in your life."
I happen to like nice men.
Nice men.
Very nice.
This transforms their relationship. They are now clearly romantically involved. It's not tension anymore. They have kissed each other. This is a romantic ordeal. Anyway,
Got it.
I just wanted to point out a couple of Joseph Campbell moments in here because they're so clear. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't started at the beginning, or if you're not familiar with Campbell versus Vogler, Vogler is sort of the modern film version of Campbell. Campbell was focused on mythology and folklore. But there's a motif in Campbell's analysis of the hero's journey called atonement with the Father, where the hero must confront whoever holds the ultimate power in his or her life. That's that moment when Luke cuts off the head and sees his own face in Darth Vader's helmet. And then later, in that key moment of the whole trilogy, when Vader says, "Luke, I'm your father," Luke denies it. Luke denies it, but Vader says, "Search your feelings, you know it to be true."
Which is an echo of what the Emperor says to Vader.
Right. So here's that atonement with the Father. In this moment, he's coming to terms with the ultimate power in his life. He hasn't confronted it yet, but he's coming to terms with it. And there's also a strange twist in this ordeal of the hero appearing to die. He appears to kill Vader, but then discovers that it's him inside that mask.
Right.
That was such an interesting twist. And then there's a concept in Campbell called apotheosis, which is a hero recognizing his own divinity. Luke realizes in this moment, his takeaway is he has the power to defeat Vader, which is why in a subsequent scene, he's willing to rush off and do it. So I saw those two little moments in this ordeal.
All right.
The next segment is reward, or the ultimate boon. Having faced his worst fear, the hero seizes the object of his quest. I see two rewards here. The first is Yoda gets the X-Wing out of the swamp, giving Luke a way to escape and return to the ordinary world of the battle between the rebels and the Empire. He invites Luke to try it. Luke says,
"All right, I'll give it a try."
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
So Luke fails. It's another failed test. Yoda moves the X-Wing, proving that Luke is not ready. He has not mastered the Force. The music in this scene, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I hear this music, I am immediately in Star Wars, and it makes me feel, I just can't even describe how it
Not
makes
Here
me
They
feel.
Come?
The thing that I loved as a kid was the idea of using the Force,
Yeah.
of being connected to this power. And this scene,
Yeah.
I can't even describe it.
Huh.
So he fails, but the X-Wing is still Luke's ticket out. And you could count this is a temptation. He hands Luke an escape. Here, Luke, you can go now. And it's a test. It's a temptation. Will you stay and continue your training, or will you go? So then the second reward I see is the Force granting Luke that vision of Han and Leia. He receives this gift for this training that he has done. You can now see the future. But this too is a test because he has to ignore the advice of his mentors and return to the war. So I thought those two things were the rewards, the X-Wing and the vision of the future. And while we're lingering here, Yoda has this mysterious line as Luke's rising up out of the swamp in his X-Wing.
Right.
Obi-Wan says,
That boy is our last hope.
No. There is another.
Now, there's all sorts of fan theories on the internet about what he's talking about. Who is this other hope? In my opinion, he's talking about Leia. This is, to me, foreshadowing that Leia has Force powers, which is why I love the moment, that controversial moment in The Last Jedi, when Leia survives the explosion of the ship and uses the Force to bring herself in. To me, that is the payoff of this promise in The Empire Strikes Back. And I don't think that moment was performed or shot terribly well. It was a little awkward, but I love that event occurs because to me, that's the payoff of this promise. I'm interested to hear what you think about that line.
I'm surprised to hear that there's any discussion at all about who the other could be. I thought it was very clear and has always been very clear that it was Leia. Maybe not in 1980 when this film came out and The Return of the Jedi had not yet established that Luke and Leia were twins. At that point, sure, then you're like, what? Who is this other one? Who could it possibly be? Because Leia so far has shown no hints of potentially being a Force user.
Have you read?
I'm really surprised to hear you say that there's all kinds of discussion and conjecture.
Have you read How Star Wars Took Over the Universe, that book that's about the entire... Okay, I'll put a link to it. I think I'm getting the name of it wrong. But there are all sorts of conversations about the fact that Luke and Leia weren't intended to be brother and sister, that developed after A New Hope came out. I've never heard Lucas directly address that subject, but there were conversations about the business side of things and how they were going to develop a sequel, that line was just a placeholder in case they couldn't get certain cast members back or in case they had to alter the script. So I don't know. And if there's a fan out there that's listening to the podcast that has a link or some direct evidence that I have missed, but I'm going to put a link to that book. That book, How Star Wars Took Over the Universe, Conquered the Universe, I think, is an amazing book about the entire Star Wars experience that shows the Star Wars saga as a series of beautiful accidents that created this empire. That book is what gave me doubts about that line being a perfect setup. Anyway.
Wow.
That's what I see as the reward. How about you?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Well, in that case, we have completed Act 2, and it's time for the beverage break. Dan, I want you to listen closely to the sound that I'm about to make. Now, you can see what's happening behind my microphone, but the listeners can't. Can you just describe what just happened?
Well, it was not the sound of silence, that's for sure. That was the sound of Jeffrey sipping coffee.
A fresh cup of coffee that you just poured me.
That's
Delicious, delicious coffee.
It is still vaporing.
And yet, it is time for the beverage break.
What do you often say?
If I can go from coffee to booze in under an hour, I'm winning. I've never had the experience of switching between coffee and booze. I'm about to do that. I feel like this is a new level of winning.
Wow, you are crossing a new threshold.
It's been a tough week, and I'm going to just enjoy this moment as much as I can.
All right, well, I have found what I hope is an amusing themed beverage for this episode of The Empire Strikes Back. So I will hand the ceremonial bag across the table to you. Make sure you fluff the paper. There you go. Yep, nice, good audio experience for the listeners.
Inniskillen ice wine, because it happens on Hoth. It's ice wine. I've never had ice wine. From the Niagara Estate. Ideally suited to the Canadian winter season, the Hoth winter season, the magical process of crafting Inniskillen wine is guided by nature. I love it. I've never had this before.
To make ice wine, you harvest the berries while they are frozen in carbonite. Not actually carbonite, but you harvest them frozen off the vine.
Wow.
And because the grapes are frozen, there is a higher concentration of sugar in the grape, which makes it much sweeter and a bit more on the alcohol side.
This bottle is narrow. I mean, so the bottle is inside of a white box. I'll have to post a picture of it. And the box is maybe 2 inches by 2 inches. So the bottle is very narrow, almost like a bottle of expensive olive oil or like body lotion. I mean,
yeah. You can imagine it's difficult to have enough grapes, frozen or otherwise, to make this kind of wine, because a lot of the berries, when they freeze, they're not going to survive that experience.
Wow.
So the volume of mashable grapes is very low when they make ice wine. So that's why when you see an ice wine bottle, it's not a full-size wine bottle. They're always little tiny things.
It's 375 milliliters. It is 9.5% alcohol by volume.
Yeah.
That's almost twice what a normal wine would be. That's like an Imperial IPA level of alcohol. Can I open the box?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is a gorgeous... Oh, and it's chilled. You've chilled this box.
It actually does look like a bottle of olive oil.
It really does. Well, let's open it and drink it.
Yeah, I'm going to get some glasses.
Are those champagne flutes?
See, yeah, ice wine is a dessert wine. So you don't want to drink... Well, I suppose you could, but it's generally not served in full wine glasses. Generally, you drink it out of a flute or what most of us would consider a champagne glass.
It's beautiful.
Ice wine also is not cheap.
Yeah.
This bottle, which is half the volume of a normal wine bottle, was $70. So if you...
Wow.
This is, essentially $140 if it were a full-size 750 milliliter wine bottle.
Thank you, patrons. This month, you covered the...
You covered half the cost of this.
Amazing.
All right.
That is the real pouring sound, not Dan's terrifyingly accurate imitation.
And because these are sweet, I'm just going to pour this much.
Yes, I'm already drunk just from smelling.
You may not like this.
He's handing me the glass. Thank you very much. It's pale. It's darker than a normal white wine. Like, it's darker than a Chardonnay or a White Zinfandel. Wouldn't you say?
No, I think it's pretty comparable to a Chardonnay. To some Chardonnays. Maybe I should say your experience with Chardonnays, you've had lighter colored
Chardonnays.
That's
a good point.
I've had some that are almost orange.
I haven't drunk a lot of Chardonnays. I'm tipping this now. Okay, so when you tip
I guess holding it toward the red wall covering is not going to give me an accurate look at what this looks like.
For those of you who haven't seen Studio Z, we have a tartan blanket covering one wall to...
Have you smelled it yet?
Oh, wow. That smell, it's very fruity.
Yeah. I mean, it almost smells like a Jolly Rancher. It's so, like, hard candy, sweet, sugary.
I'm doing it. I'm drinking it.
Oh, my God, that's sweet.
That's, wow.
You see why it's a dessert wine served in a small glass?
Yeah, but you would have to... Oh, wow, that's... So I get super berry the minute it hits your tongue. But the finish is like apple juice from when you were at like Mott's,
right?
Or
yeah.
Martinelli's apple juice.
Yeah.
I'm taking another sip. Strong too.
Oh, geez. I mean, just the sugar just lingers in your mouth.
Wow.
It just sits there. I can see why people drink something this sweet while they're maybe smoking a cigar or something, or a pipe, because that might cut the sugar a bit.
Yeah.
You know, just you mix it with the smoke in your mouth, and that'll.
I'm gonna light my pipe right now.
Is this a? Is that a Colonel Londa massive pipe that you've got going on?
Yes, I used a small torch to light it. Wow.
Oh my God, that is cloying. It's not unpleasant, but it is way too much. This is not a casual sipping wine. This is definitely for dessert.
This is delicious. I'm gonna finish my.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm gonna finish my glass.
This is nice.
Ooh, I'm gonna take a sip of coffee.
Oh,
the bitterness
God.
of the coffee.
Well, we'll see.
That's got a smoky tobacco flavor, and then I'm gonna. No, don't do that.
No. So they're going from coffee to ice wine in under 10 seconds. Oh, now to water. Okay, you've just consumed 3 different beverages in 20 seconds. You
All right.
might have a problem. If you were to walk up and lick Han Solo's carbonite frozenness, would it taste like this? I wonder. Probably not.
I hope.
Carbon probably has much more of a earthy flavor.
I feel like Han Solo would be saltier than this. All right, we're going to drink our Inniskillin very expensive, very sweet Canadian ice wine, and we'll be back with Act 3.
All right, Act 3 begins with the road back, where the hero is pursued by vengeful forces he disturbed when he seized the sword, or received his reward, or his ultimate boon. You said this was a part of the ultimate boon, but I saw Luke's vision of Han and Leia in pain as part of the road back. This is Luke knowing that his friends and allies, the people that he loves, are suffering. And this seemed to me like the beginning of the vengeful forces.
He knows that they will suffer because they tell him he's seeing the future.
Yeah. So for you, the knowledge that they will be in pain before it happens, and that gives him the opportunity to rush to their aid and hopefully prevent it, is part of the ultimate boon for you?
This is his call to come back to the ordinary world of the battle against the Empire. This is that instigating moment.
Sure.
But I think the reason I identified it as a reward is that it's a result of his Force training with Yoda.
Sure.
He couldn't have had this
he wouldn't
vision.
have done it.
Yeah, so
You're
this
right.
is part of his new powers. I think that's why it's not so much the content of the message that's a reward, it's the ability to see the future. All
right, so on Bespin, Han and friends have been greeted by Lando Calrissian, played by Billy D. Williams, and he's a little bit of a shapeshifter right here in this initial interaction where he seems like he's angry and menacing, and he's just playing a trick on Han Solo.
I have a question for you. Sorry. So before they land on Bespin, you know, they're trying to land and he says, "No, I don't have a clearance." And they shoot at him.
Right.
Do you think that's Lando trying to warn him? Like, no, don't land, get away?
Huh.
Because they just, you know, it seems really out of character to fire a warning shot against an unaggressive ship, but they do it. Do you have a code? No, I don't have a code. I was like, pew, pew. And so I wonder if that was Lando saying, "Hey, don't let him land. Get him."
Well, but then they grant him permission to land anyway.
Right. But they do. But I'm wondering if that's, you know, Vader. I don't know.
Maybe that was his one chance, because at this point in the story, well, we don't know it, but at this point in the story, the Empire's already there.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There could be someone standing over their shoulder.
Right.
Saying you will order them to land on this platform, but maybe before that, the radio operator, whoever's communicating with the little pod cloud car things, are like, go shoot him across the bow, get him.
I mean, it could
go away.
I could totally be overthinking it. It could just be they were trying to create more conflict. But
it's an interesting take. I like it. Threepio gets separated from the group.
Yes.
First, he sees another Threepio unit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very rude
He cuts open Vader's helmet and sees his own Threepio face inside Vader, and then inside that is Luke's face.
And he hears an R2 unit, and that draws him into that other room.
Yeah.
Where we don't see who is confronting Threepio, but Threepio gets annihilated.
Unusual Star Wars moment. Usually we are seeing things from the hero's perspective or then the villain's perspective, and when they're in the same room together, we see them both.
Yeah.
This is like the thriller mystery moment. Like, who blasted C-3PO?
Right, who was that? And it wasn't the voice that says, "Who are you?" It wasn't a human voice.
It made me think it was a droid.
Right? I thought it was like an alien or something. It wasn't human. And when 3PO's audio recorder is played back, it says, "Oh no, Stormtrooper's here."
Yeah.
That didn't sound like a Stormtrooper.
It's kind of a cheat, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. To make you not think, "Oh, it must be," I don't know. But anyway.
Maybe in the special edition, C-3PO could see that it was a Stormtrooper because of the CGI.
Yeah. Representing vengeful forces here, Han and the group are tricked by Lando, and he brings them to Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And where they undergo torture. Poor Chewie is in some kind of a holding cell, and they're playing this really horribly grating, shrieking noise, and Chewie's screaming like, make it stop.
Yeah.
And Han Solo is undergoing some physical torture by some kind of zapping machine as Vader looks on in amusement.
Yeah.
And Han later says to Leia, "They didn't even ask me any questions." This was just torture just to torture him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they weren't looking for the location of the secret rebel base or anything. They just wanted to mess with Han Solo.
And they've replaced Boba Fett with an Australian guy.
He's no good to me dead.
Oh, New Zealand. But yeah.
Ooh, I just pissed off everyone.
You did. You
in
pissed
Australia
off all the Kiwis.
and New Zealand. Ooh.
And then Han Solo is frozen in carbonite. All of this is vengeful forces.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
There's other representations as Lando is trying to negotiate his way around this situation.
Yeah.
Where first Vader says, "You have to leave Leia and Chewie here in the city. They're not allowed to leave."
You're right.
And he says that was not a part of the deal. And Vader keeps altering the deal.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
I've used this line with my children.
I'm sure.
I was just going to add one thing, which is that the Falcon escaping the Imperial fleet is magic flight.
Right.
This is the first time I've watched this movie since seeing Solo, a Star Wars story, which I feel like Solo was largely dismissed as a fluffy Star Wars movie. But that's one of the things I've enjoyed about the Star Wars story movies that aren't part of the continuing saga, the origin story. Like Rogue One and Solo both are tonally very different from typical Star Wars movies. But after watching that movie and watching this, I found that knowing the backstory, having seen the events to which Lando and Han Solo refer vaguely in this movie and how, that was my ship and I went fair and square, I enjoyed this scene more. It enhanced my enjoyment of that scene. And I don't know that I can say that of the other, like certainly not the prequels. I don't feel like, I always felt like the prequel backstories felt tonally off. They didn't seem like they explained the relationships better, but this scene did.
I also enjoyed Solo very much. I would be okay not knowing the actual story of how Han Solo won the Millennium Falcon off of Lando. I think that's one of those neat backstory moments that you don't need, that just adds to the mystery of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But as fan service, it's a fun movie.
Agreed.
My last point is Luke has landed on Bespin. Or is it on Cloud City?
Right.
Bespin is the planet, right?
I don't know.
I feel like I knew that 20 years ago when I was super Star Wars fanboy, and it's like a lot of my knowledge has disappeared because I've had to replace it with other stuff.
The word Bespin never appears in the film. It's just something you know from having read and seen other things and fan conversations. I don't think they ever say Bespin in the movie.
Huh. Anyway, so Luke lands in Cloud City and changes into his Safari Browns and sneaks through this oddly empty facility that we've seen bustling and comes across the contingency that is taking Leia and Chewie to Vader's shuttle.
Hang on.
What?
That's the outfit he's wearing during his final training sequence with Yoda. He just puts the jacket on. You see him sleeveless. And I remember thinking that too, that he had completely changed outfits because it looks all clean. But in high def on a big TV, his outfit is filthy. It's stained and dirty. Imagine how he must have smelled running through the jungle training and then locking himself in a tiny spaceship.
Yeah.
I bet he was ripe when he got out on the Bespin.
Probably. That Imperial officer that sees his shadow down the hall, he probably smelled him first.
I mean,
that's what made him look in that direction.
Vader's already got some upper respiratory stuff going on. It probably helped Luke in that lightsaber battle. He would have bitten it far sooner if it hadn't been for the reek he was emanating.
Oh. Just go.
That's all I got.
All right, so I was going to finish by saying he comes across that contingency and Leia screams out,
Luke! Luke, don't it's a trap! It's a trap!
But he walks into it anyway.
Yeah, he's been warned by literally everyone in the movie who can possibly warn him.
Exactly.
Also, I remember it being a firefight between Luke and the guys, but Luke never fires a shot. I'd remembered it wrong.
Yeah.
He doesn't exchange gunfire.
Boba Fett almost shoots him in the face.
Yeah.
If that wall hadn't been there, Luke would be dead, and then Vader would be really pissed off.
I think Boba Fett was distracted by the smell.
That's how good a shot Boba Fett is. He missed on purpose.
That brings us to Resurrection, where the hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic way, and returns to the land of the living, a changed person. As you mentioned, Vader freezes Han Solo in carbonite, and right before they do that, as the stormtroopers are about to push Han Solo into the chamber, Chewie freaks out and tries to rescue him, and Solo talks him down, and then Han and Leia exchange the most famous romantic lines in film history.
I love you.
I know.
I will be discussing during the tidbits section how that line, I know, came about. So if you're listening to this and you want a little backstory, you're not familiar with the backstory of that scene, check out the tidbits, become a patron. This whole sequence is so tense. Watching it again, I've seen this movie so many times, and I know the ending, and I know every plot point so well that the tension and the surprise is sometimes lost.
Right.
But watching this again, we know Luke is on his way. Star Wars films have happy ending. Luke's going to bust in here and rescue everybody and save Han Solo. Only he doesn't.
Right.
And we are, what? What? They're winning? So Han Solo is frozen in carbonite, and then they bring out this block, this shocking image of he's frozen in this block, and Lando checks his life signs, and he's still alive. So that's a kind of resurrection. He's dropped into the pit, frozen, but he's not dead. Then, at the end of that scene, this has nothing to do with the hero's journey. There's this great, the scene ends with this orchestral hit. Lando looks at his aide, Lobot, who is one of my favorite Star Wars figures. He's the bald guy with the sort of like computer wrapped around his head. The guy who plays Lobot has this great performance where he looks at Lando without turning his head, and his eyes just go all the way to the side, and you hear this dong, and it's this great, ooh, what's going to happen? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the resurrection moment. This is the great battle for life and death, is the epic lightsaber duel between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. I forgot how intense and relentless and long this lightsaber duel is.
Yeah.
They start in the carbon freezing chamber room, and then they go in a tunnel, and then there's, Vader's throwing pieces of the room at him and knocks him out the window.
Yeah. Vader's assault escalates. This battle takes place in three sections.
Yeah.
And each section, his attacks are more relentless up until the third part, where he's just two-handed, just overhand smashing on Luke Skywalker.
He is giving into his anger.
He's frustrated. Yeah, he's giving it, exactly.
So while this is going on, Lando has taken his men and kind of rescued Princess Leia and Chewie and the droids from the clutches of the Empire, and his men take the stormtroopers away, and then Chewie freaks out and starts strangling Lando because he's pissed at the betrayal, and finally lets go of him, and they say, there's a chance to save Han. Oh, it's another resurrection. Han's not dead, and maybe he can be rescued.
It sounds like Han.
There's still a chance to save Han. Please. Platform.
We've got another tense thing where they're trying to save Han Solo, and you're like, oh, thank God, they're going to save Han Solo now. Luke didn't, but now they're going to save him. And they get to the platform, and Boba Fett takes off in Slave One with Han Solo. And again, you're like, what is happening? And you're like, oh, well, this is just going to be a really long movie then, because obviously they have to resolve this. I just remember Carrie Fisher's performance as Slave One takes off. She goes from like this shock to this sort of like, I'm going to f***ing kill that guy. There's a little note of ferocity.
Wow.
A little future flash of General Leia. So while that's going on, we cut back to the battle between Luke and Darth Vader. And Darth Vader has Luke pinned on this little narrow tower strip of metal that's sticking out over a massive drop. And that's when we get this dialogue where Vader says,
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
No. It's not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
That moment of performance by Mark Hamill is so good. I underrated him until I rewatched this movie. His performance is excellent because he goes from this angry guy fighting to a child like this. Darth Vader's just cut off his hand and his lightsaber goes tumbling into the abyss. Vader says, join me, and Luke says, I'll never join you, and he lets himself fall. Death. The hero appears to die.
Right.
That's as bad as it gets.
Going base jumping without a parachute.
Yeah. There are our other heroes taking off in the Millennium Falcon, but Vader and his Star Destroyers are pursuing them. The hyperdrive isn't fixed because the Empire sabotaged it. But in another mini resurrection, R2 repairs the hyperdrive and they escape. Oh, duh. The other resurrection,
after
they rescue Luke.
Pulled Luke off the spindly bits that are hanging off the bottom of Cloud City.
Right. They rescue Luke. Exactly right. And we see another of Luke's new force powers. He can communicate telepathically, and Leia can hear him.
He has a little convo with Vader.
Right. They use that crazy optical wipe feature where we see them both.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I see as resurrection.
Yeah. But right before R2 fixes the hyperdrive, Piet has his little moment of resurrection where Vader has arrived back on his Star Destroyer and is in front of Piet and says,
Did your men deactivate the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon?
Yes, my lord.
Good.
Had he said, yeah, they couldn't do it in time, that's when Piet would get choked out.
Right.
But no, he says yes.
I wonder if after his second promotion, Piet just started wearing a diaper 24/7. I think after watching two people be strangled to death by the Force before your eyes, I'd be like, you know what? I don't want to pee my uniform a third time. I'm going to start wearing some protection.
Yep. All right, the final segment is Return with the Elixir, or Freedom to Live. The Millennium Falcon disappears into hyperspace just as Piet is about to give the order to activate the tractor beam and complete his mission to capture the Millennium Falcon.
Yes.
And Vader does a little double take and walks right past Piet. Piet is free to live another day.
Yeah. What do you think inspired that moment of mercy? I think Vader's just like so out of his mind furious he can't even bring himself to kill another dude? Or is he like, I'm out of leaders. If I kill this guy, I'll have to promote a private.
Yeah, that little lieutenant from earlier on. I don't know. I think he's just so amazed that it happened. He's stunned. Because you see, he does a double take. You've never seen Vader do that before. He starts to walk away, and then he turns and looks back, and in his head, he's going, really?
Yeah, right.
Like, how do they keep getting away?
I also think tonally, if he'd choked out another guy, it would have been like, oh, come on. the moment would have been off color for where that was in the movie.
And it's much more powerful to have him walk away, and it's silent. All the officers and the everyone working there on the bridge are just looking at him like, oh crap.
Vader's composure, even when he's so pissed off he's killing someone, is what makes him terrifying.
Yep.
Great moment.
Yeah. From the Rebels' perspective, the Falcon has regrouped with the fleet. Lando has put on Han Solo's clothes, which is a little resurrection of Han Solo.
Oh, I didn't.
What?
Wow. Totally missed that in all my years of watching this movie.
Are you serious?
Yes. Wow.
That's never come up in any conversation. You've never heard about... Wow, okay.
I mean, it's possible it did and I wasn't paying attention. That happens a lot.
There's been a lot of discussion over the years among fans. It's like, why is Lando wearing like the white shirt and black vest of Han Solo?
Maybe that's just the uniform of the captain of the Millennium Falcon.
That's one possible explanation. Another one is that when they escape Cloud City, Lando didn't have time to pack a bag, so he doesn't have his own clothes. So he just raids Han Solo's closet. Anyway, the two of them are radioing to Luke and Leia, who are in the medical ship, and they're promising that they are going to find Han Solo.
Yeah.
Luke receives his mechanical hand, which becomes important in the third film. And as the music swells, Luke puts his arm around Leia, and Threepio puts his hand on R2's shoulder as the four of them watch the Millennium Falcon fly off into space. You see the entire Rebel fleet massed together. They have regrouped. Directed by Irvin Kershner.
We have reached the end of this journey. Join us next month when we cover... head to patreon.com/heroesjourney to place your vote on the subject of our next episode.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell 5 friends about us, and please give us a 5-star review on iTunes.
The Hero's Journey is produced by Jeff Garvin and Dan Zarzana, with original music by Taylor Jordan. Thanks to Dean Ethington for designing our logo. This episode, we sampled Inniskillen Ice Wine from the Inniskillen Estate Wines, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Canada.
The Empire Strikes Back is copyright 1980 and 1997. Lucasfilm Limited.
Pull over on the freeway right now. Launch the Twitter application and follow us at Heroes Podcast. That's Heroes, Heros Podcast. Then like us at Facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast and check our show notes, including links to what we're reading, watching, playing, and drinking at heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Until next time,
I am your father.
Do or do not. There is no try. Luminous beings are...
Finish it. Finish it.
You have failed me for the last time. Journey on.
No disintegrations.
He's no good to me dead. Journey on.